During this time-lapse painting of a cosmic owl, which is being painted on a timber artist's palette here with oil paint, I'll be sharing a few things about my painting process amongst other things. This particular time-lapse is actually a follow-on after my previous oil painting time-lapse video in this series, which was of the cosmic frog. I'll be touching on different aspects of the painting process with each new time-lapse video. This is the color palette that I'll be using for this painting. There'll be a more useful image of the palette that you can screenshot later in this video for your own use. I'll also just say a little something about the colors I chose to use. I'll also be sharing something about the esoteric and symbolic meaning of an owl, since I'm painting one here. I also made a slight mistake towards the completion of the painting, which I will share and show, because everyone learns as much from failures and mistakes as we do from successes. So just adding more of the flat blocks of color in here for the base layer of the painting. So you may have noticed that I sometimes wear gloves while painting with oils, especially while painting the base layer of the painting, which is the messier part of the painting. I always encouraged my students who did oil painting to use gloves. Some paint colors are more toxic than others due to the pigments that they contain, especially the cadmiums, reds and oranges, which are quite toxic. And the cobalt blues and violets can also be harmful. Of course, lead white is extremely toxic. And just softening some of the edges of the colors before the painting is left to dry. So painting in the background. Now the painting's been left to dry here. So all of the details that I'm putting on the top here are being put on top of dry paint. You notice I've taken the gloves off my hands. That's because the painting at this stage isn't so messy. Adding color and then blending it into the dry paint. So the shapes and the designs in this painting are not really very symmetrical and are a little bit crooked, a little bit uneven, because I don't want the painting to look too mechanical. I actually want it to look hand painted. All of the designs are just made intuitively, almost like doodling. Adding feathers with a thin brush and then just softening the lines afterwards. Softening and then adding more feathers and then softening and then adding more. Owls have long been regarded as powerful spiritual symbols, often associated with wisdom, intuition, and the ability to see beyond the illusion, with a connection to unseen realms. As nocturnal creatures, they are linked to the mysteries of the unseen world and are thought to guide people through periods of transition, helping reveal hidden secrets and deeper knowledge. In many spiritual traditions, owls symbolize heightened awareness and inner vision, encouraging trust in one's own instincts and perceptions. They are also seen as guardians of sacred knowledge, representing the balance between light and darkness, and reminding us that insight often comes from quiet observation, patience, and reflection. Adding more shapes with a stencil. This is quite a stylized painting of an owl with these tribal patterns. My own work has become far more illustrative. Back in the day, I used to paint far more realistically. I just found illustrations print better and they go more with my later subject matter. However, I mostly taught traditional realism in my art school because that is the base of most other styles of painting. I also taught a lot of abstract. I think it's often a fantastic idea to combine abstract with realism. Creating a circle for the background just by using a plate as a stencil. Now just adding in some of those feathers with a small thin brush and then softening the edges of those feathers. Then adding more feathers on top and softening those edges. So again, the blends and the shades and the shadows are not nearly as smooth as they would be if they were painted on a canvas. Painting on a board naturally gives the paintings more of a painterly look. So these oil paintings on artists' palettes that I'm doing for this series will be available for sale. Between 20 and 100% of the proceeds will be going to charity. There'll be a link in the description below. So this dotting for the stars is not actually done with a paintbrush. It's actually done with a dotting tool. So this painting is now dry about 3 days later. So all of the stenciling and detail that is done now is done on top of a dry painting. And after we've done this background, we're also going to be adding the glazing, because as you can see, the owl is quite flat. There's not a lot of highlights or color source. So we'll be adding yellow glaze, which is transparent paint. Usually people add transparent paint with liquid to make their glazes, but I use transparent paint that has no pigment to make my glazes because I find the liquids too shiny. But the sort of mistake that I made here is that by adding the yellow transparent paint over the blue and mistakenly mixing some of the blue with the yellow transparent paint, I introduced a color that was not initially supposed to be on the painting, and that is the color green. I could have wiped it off and tried to stick with my original color palette, but just decided to keep it. The next oil painting on artist palette that I'll be doing in this series will be of a witchy woman dancing in the forest using the colors turquoise, orange and purple, and there will be a lot of stippling being used in that painting. So before I show you the completed and final painting, so this is the color palette that I used for this painting. One thing to also always think about when choosing a color palette is the colors that you leave out. In this case, purples, reds, pinks, turquoises. So So thank you for joining me in this painting journey. If you have any questions regarding this painting process or anything else, just pop them in the comments section below, and see you in the next one.